Good morning and welcome to the first 2013 presidential debate. My name is Alondra Baya and I will be moderating this debate. This morning we have with us candidates Zach Werber for the Republican Party, Miguel Vasquez for the Libertarian Party, and Kyle Decker for the Democratic Party. Good morning. We will be addressing issues on education, economics, and foreign affairs. Keep in mind you have 2 minutes per question, and after all the candidates have answered, there will be a 1-minute rebuttal. Any questions? All right, let's begin. For education. All right, Zach Werber. For education, in light of the fact that students are graduating from college with higher student loan debts than ever before, what do you plan to do to alleviate this?
Well, okay, so we want Congress to exempt this section 170 of the tax code. What this means is it allows donations to students from donations to students to be counted as charitable acts. This allows for the debtor to gain grounds on the debt, the donor to receive a tax write-off, and the economy to become overall stronger. This is not a bailout, but just a means for giving back so higher giving back. In 2010 alone, the top 5 corporations donated over $1.2 billion to charity. So really, there is no reason why that these corporations can't give smaller portions to these students to help educate this country as well as receiving. Students will help educate this country as well as receiving a lower taxable income.
Great. Miguel Vasquez.
Alright, I believe education is best provided through the free market and because it achieves greater quality, accountability, and efficiency, and it has more diversity of choice. That being said, I believe that the people that are going to be hiring the students should invest in the future because they want the workers to have a better education so that they can have better workers working for the company.
I believe that the federal government is in a unique position to provide an equal opportunity to all students across the United States to provide loans. President Obama has started doing this, allocating more money for student loan programs and work-study programs. I believe that you shouldn't have to rely on the corporations or on other people for those. If you need the money to go to college, you should be able to get it from the government. And the government comes up with ways for you to structure your payments and all kinds of different ways for you to just be able to come back and pay those loans back. But college or higher education is something that you need in today's day and age to succeed and to get good jobs. And without that, our workforce will be left behind in the 21st century, and so we need to make sure that our students get educated.
Any comments?
Kyle, when you're talking about how students shouldn't rely on corporations, that's like saying no different than it should be that the students should not depend on government for these funds. So I mean, they're not depending. They also have their academic scholarships, their physical, their sports scholarships. They have all these other scholarships they can choose from. It's just that if they need some extra boost, there's all this money coming from these corporations that just a small donation, just a part of this donation can help them without having to rely on the federal government. So we can be spending that money on something else that can be used in a different way to help not just students but the whole country.
What happens when a student gets no scholarship opportunities with corporations? What happens if a student doesn't play sports? What happens if a student doesn't excel academically? What if a student can't get any of those? They don't get to go to college because they don't have the money?
Well,
I think government should, because government can provide it to everybody, no matter how much they need, whether they need $50,000 or $5,000. Government has the opportunity, or has the ability to be able to provide it to everybody.
You are right. You are definitely right. I'm not saying I don't want to get rid of this completely. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to reduce the amount of federal spending on students, not completely just get rid of it.
Well, it's also not spending, it's loans. It's not like we're giving them the money to pay it back.
So, moving on to the next question under education. Miguel, you would answer this one first, and then we go on to Kyle and Zach. Right, so currently with the government shutdown, thousands of college students are being denied their scholarships. With Congress still receiving their paychecks, how would you explain this to the American people?
Well, I think this is a good example of why we don't need such a big government, because right now with the government shutdown, the government is still getting paid, but the little guy is the one getting screwed over. So we're for the people. We want the people to, so that money could be going to the people, or basically it's not necessary for us to have that large of a government. We can easily reduce that because we don't need all these bureaucracies that we need to fund that are unnecessary to run the country.
All right, Ms. Becker.
Congress receives its paycheck just because they get paid yearly, and the government shut down for a couple months won't affect that. Thousands of student loans are getting denied, and it's really a congressional problem. The president should show leadership, but it's Congress's responsibility to pass a budget, and right now they're just not doing their job. But I don't know. There's not really anything to be done right now. You have to wait for the legislators to work through what they're stuck on.
Mr. Werber?
Let me just start off by saying the Republican Party did not cause this shutdown. It was more of the likes of Ted Cruz, who might be running underneath Republican, but is a very strong Libertarian. Moderates such as myself, we have refused paychecks. We have refused our paychecks from Congress. But we're also giving out money to charities so we can help prevent future disasters. So we try to encourage private corporations, wealthy individuals, and others to help alleviate some of this debt that we have fallen into.
Any comments?
Zach said Republicans didn't cause the shutdown, and then proceeded to blame a Republican for the shutdown. I mean, Ted Cruz is a Republican, he's a Republican senator from Texas.
Right, but he is a very strong Libertarian.
And if your party was together, you'd be able to vote together and make your party more.
But the whole party is not. It's just a select few that don't want this to happen. And
Republicans.
right, okay, but I'm not like them. I'm a moderate. I believe in
It's
conservative.
not your fault the government shut down, but it is Republicans' fault.
All right, so the next section is economics. Mr. Decker, you would start this question. So the question is, with the current government shutdown because of the impasse in Congress, what would you do if you are elected as president to get our government back on track?
For the time being, like I said, you can't force Congress to work any faster. These Republicans that are holding up the House of Representatives aren't going to be pushed or bullied by any president. What I would do is I would have a series of small spending bills that would get necessary services up and running again. Just like President Obama on the eve of the shutdown signed a bill that continued to pay the armed forces and defense spending. I mean, there's some things that are vital and should never be shut down, and right now those things are shut down. And so I would try to get those things back working while Republicans and Democrats in Congress get their acts together.
For me, it would be quite simple. I would pretty much, I feel as though I would be able to work with Congress. I mean, if you think about it, Congress is mostly run by Republicans, and since I'm a Republican, it's going to be easier to work with, and we can start to agree more, and I can start to influence them and help compromise this whole situation.
Oh, well, like I said, smaller government, if we want, that's basically it, because we Libertarians want all members of society to have an abundant opportunities to achieve economic success, and I think a free market allocates resources in the most efficient manner.
All right, and comments on that? All right. The next question, Mr. Werber, you would start it off. The Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, seems to be a current major clashing point in Congress. What is your stance on the Affordable Health Care Act? And if your stance opposes Obamacare in any way, what would you do differently?
Okay, so I am against the Affordable Health Care Act, or also known as Obamacare. How would I do it differently? I would make it more open. I would privatize the healthcare system, which in result would lower the prices for this healthcare. The reason why this will happen is because you will have the, for example, let's take computers. Computers lately have been very expensive, but once they all come out with the same software and hardware, these companies start lowering their prices because they want you, the consumer, the buyer, to purchase their computer. So it'll be the same thing with healthcare. Once we all get around, when we privatize healthcare, we let them run it, then they will start to notice that everyone else has almost the same or maybe better, so they'll start reducing their costs, allowing more citizens to go and purchase this healthcare. Because pretty much the federal government right now is the middleman between the citizen and the healthcare system.
The Libertarians are against Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act because why should the government make you have to have health insurance? What if I don't want health insurance? I'm going to get fined for it. I think insurance is better provided to the private economy, like Werber was saying. And the government is limiting the people's choice, and the government shouldn't have the right to do that.
Okay, Mr. Dobbins?
I believe Obamacare is a good thing and that it's essential. I mean, the reason healthcare has been provided by the private sector since the country came into existence until 2009, until about 3 days ago, or a week ago. The reason that Obamacare was passed is that people were being denied coverage, people with pre-existing conditions couldn't get any care, and medical bills were going to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Poor people, the lowest part of our society, couldn't afford healthcare. They couldn't afford good healthcare, and so my colleagues over here ask why should government take over healthcare? Wasn't the private sector doing just fine with it? No, they weren't. They were charging whatever they wanted to. They were charging too much. They weren't accepting everybody. They were leaving people out. Obamacare makes sure that everyone has health care and that everyone pays reasonable prices.
Okay, that may be true in some ways, but with Obamacare, you're going to have to end up paying. So you have to pay for this healthcare. It's not a question. They're forcing you to pay for this healthcare whether you like it or not. Now, I'm not going to go crazy and call it unconstitutional, but it's insane that the government would force their citizens to pay for healthcare, and if you don't pay for it, you have to pay a tax. So you're penalized for not paying for it by paying more.
Any other questions?
Well, that's true for some people. It's true for a certain part of the population, and it's not true for everybody. The law is very complex. It's like 1,400 pages. But overall, it allows people to have health insurance. It allows the average people in America to have health insurance if they hadn't had that opportunity before. People that already had health insurance don't have to get it.
Right. So moving on to our last topic, which is foreign affairs, Mr. Vasquez, you would start this off. The question is, what is your stance on Syria? What part should the U.S. play in the war in Syria?
Well, we favor. We believe that we should be at peace with the world. We do not want to police the world. We just want a large enough military to protect the United States. And unless the U.S. interest is at harm, we should not interfere. Unless something like really radical happens, like the Holocaust, then we should step in. But if no one's being hurt, the UN can step in and take care of the world. The U.S. should not be policing the world.
I also believe that in Syria, we don't really have any reason to go to Syria. Even if chemical weapons or not, we can't go into every conflict that we feel like we have the right to go into. So on Syria, I'd have to agree that there's no reason for us to go in over there. And, yeah.
Mr. Werber?
So I believe that at first step would be to deal with Syria would be to negotiate. So peace is always our first option. We want peace, but that doesn't always happen. So we would have, so our next choice in the matter would most likely be tactical bombing. Now, tactical bombing has been an idea that's been tossed around for a long time, since the Cold War. And then if that doesn't work, we will have an invasion. We'll invade if necessary. I mean, this is not right what they're doing to their citizens right now. Right now, there's over 2 million refugees coming from Syria that are lost their homes due to the gas, and there's an extra 2 million estimated by 2014. And there's no signs of this stopping. So we have to do something about this, and we can't just say we can't negotiate. And if they say no, we can't just back off, because this can only get worse from here.
Any comments?
So you would invade Syria?
See, it's kind of, yeah. Well, hopefully, well, I wouldn't. That was my last choice. That would be our last option. Would be to invade Syria. That's the last thing we want to do. But we have the support of other Arab nations. They will pay. They'll help pay for our campaign, our invasion for this. They will help us with this because they believe what Syria is doing is wrong, and they don't.
It's American troops on the ground. American soldiers invading Syria.
And another question: why is it in the U.S. interest to go help Syria?
Because of their use of chemical weapons. Because it's morally wrong, and what they're doing to their citizens, we should not let that stand for. We should set an example that other countries should not be doing this.
And why should we focus on it? Why can't the rest of the world help out?
Well,
And so your reason for Syria is going in for chemical weapons. What happens if this deal with Russia goes through and Syria gives up its chemical weapons? Would you still invade?
no, negotiations would be our first option. So if we negotiate a peaceful way to retrieve these chemical weapons, then there's no reason for the other two options.
But you just said that the problem is that the government is killing thousands of people.
That's because they had chemical weapons. So the main goal was to take the chemical weapons away.
The chemical weapons were used like under a dozen times. They've been killing people with bullets for 2 years.
Well, then we will help support. So now we're going to, then we'll help support the rebels as we've been doing for the last couple of years by supplying them with weapons and ammunition they need so they can take care of their own. We haven't sent troops yet into Syria. We have yet to do that. So I don't see why we should start doing that.
Well, yeah, I don't want to send troops to Syria.
Neither do I.
And I don't want to send guns over there either, because when we sent guns to Afghanistan in the 70s, they ended up being used against us in 2000s.
Well, if we don't help them, then the ones that we want to lose are going to win, and then it's going to be crazy. It's going to be, situation's going to happen.
Excuse me, gentlemen. All right. Mr. Werber, just to clarify, do you believe that the rest of the world should enter our country if they don't like what we do here?
Okay, so they do not like what we do here. No, they shouldn't, but you don't see this country going around murdering their own citizens from the government. The government's not going around murdering their own citizens through hatred. And of course, we'll have violence. Every country has violence. Every country will have those individuals that go around and kill their own citizens, but we don't have a government that goes around and kills them for the sake of terrorism. So if that were to ever happen, which will not happen, then that would be a totally different story.
Okay. All right, so our last question, Mr. Deputy, we started wrong. The U.S. spends billions of dollars on global aid each year. What is your stance on the U.S. funding of other countries' relief efforts?
So, the majority of aid that the United States gives out is to developing countries and to Israel. I believe that the majority of the aid that the United States gives out is vital, and it maintains peace across the world. I know that President Obama last night decided to cut a lot of funds to Egypt because of the way the government's being run over there, and I agree with that, especially in these times of not having a government shutdown and sequestration and federal budget running short. But I do think that aid and the amount of aid we're giving out is necessary to maintain peace in regions across the world.
To that, I also agree. Yes, we should be giving money. We should be giving some of our money to help the undeveloped countries and to help the warring countries result in peace. As for the billions of dollars spent on global aid, it's actually not that much if you think about it. We are trillions of dollars in debt, and that's only, so what we're spending on foreign aid is only about 0.2% of our total amount of money. And so it's not affecting us that much that we have to really worry about it. So what we're doing is good right now. We keep giving money to those countries that need it, and we should be able to maintain our government while doing so.
Well, what I would do is reduce foreign aid, plain and simple, because the money we're giving to the other countries aren't going directly to the people. They are not directly helping the people. We're giving it to the government, and they don't have a stable government. They might have a corrupt government, so they might keep the money to themselves. If we're going to help another country in any way, we should ask the people how we can help them and send people over there to help them. We don't just have to fund the money. We can find other charitable organizations to help other countries.
All right, so any rebuttals?
Well, I do, because it's not like we give money to any government. We vet governments, we make sure that we give it to the most democratic government and that it's not being used for corrupt reasons. But this money does eventually get down to the people, and even if it doesn't, it serves to make the government of that country easier to run, and which in turn helps the people. And in cases like Israel, where 90% of the aid we give them is military, it protects the people. And I think that not giving them that aid, or giving them that aid through charities or non-governmental organizations, would just be a mistake because it wouldn't be able to be used in the best ways.
Yeah, but what about like the aid to Colombia? We aid money to Colombia to fight the war on drugs, but yet we see the drugs coming into the country because the government isn't helping the people. They are using the money in a corrupt way.
Well, I think that drug smugglers are going to smuggle drugs. I mean, I think that without the money we give them, it would be a lot worse. And I think that without that kind of funding, Colombia would be in a much
Basically
worse
just
shape.
give the money to make the country, to make us feel better. Like,
Not
oh,
to
we
make
give the
us-
money, so we should feel good about ourselves.
Not to make us feel better, but like I said, the amount of money we're giving them is helping. If we didn't give Colombia any money, they wouldn't put any money into trying to stop the drug trade, and there'd be a lot more drugs in the United States. So I think whatever amount of money we give them to help fight drugs is a good thing. I mean, I don't know specifically about Colombia, but giving countries money to help fight drugs, it's just the right thing to do.
But instead of using that money to fight drugs, why can't they help? The reason the people going to drug smuggling is to get a job, because there are no jobs in Colombia. So why can't they use that money to stimulate their economy, to create jobs?
I feel like a lot of the drug smugglers would smuggle drugs even if they could get another job.
A lot of people don't. They just do it because there is no other option. Do you think they want to make drugs to
I
other
don't
people?
pretend to understand the mindset of the average Colombian man.
All right, so now I would like to give each candidate 2 minutes to give the final statement. So, Mr. Werber, would you like to start us off?
Sure, why not? So pretty much what we're going to do, we want for education, we want to have larger corporations start donating money to scholarship funds for students, to have these students less dependent on government loans. Again, some of us are declining our paychecks from in Congress, and then we're giving our own money to these charitable events. For Syria, we're going to keep supplying aid. We're going to help these refugees out, and our first goal is to negotiate peace. For economics, we want to privatize healthcare, allow more competition between healthcare, lowering prices, as well as working with Congress to get rid of this shutdown once and for all.
Well, I'll just start off by saying, unlike the two major parties, we place the interest of our nation above the interest of our political party. While the Republican and Democratic Party exist to maintain their own power, we exist to grasp power for the benefit of the millions of other Americans across our nation. And what we would do is basically smaller government and let live, and return all the liberties back to the people.
I stand for improving education across the country, not just at the college level either. But we weren't asked about that today, so I'll talk about the college level. I believe that government has a unique opportunity to help students, not just by asking corporations to please put money in an account for scholarships, which they wouldn't have to do, or by cutting the funding altogether. I believe that if a student wants to go to college, the government should be there to provide them with a loan to get their education. When it comes to foreign policy, I think that we shouldn't go in Syria. We don't have a reason, especially if they do give up their chemical weapons. There's no reason for us to go to Syria. We just got out of Iraq. We're going to be out of Afghanistan by the end of next year. There's no reason for us to start a third conflict in that region because we know how it goes end. When it comes to the economy, I believe, or when it comes to healthcare specifically, I believe that Obamacare is a good thing because it allows people with pre-existing conditions and other people that would be refused treatment otherwise to get cheaper healthcare that works for them and saves them money at the same time and saves the government money at the same time too. And
All right. I want to thank each of you for joining us and allowing the American people to hear your ideas. Please join us for the second debate next Friday, where we will discuss more topics and share more ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.